compensate for the good deeds done for them. Again, you think of it outside of the religion. If someone comes up and does something good for you, without you even asking for it. For example, you were driving, someone gave you the way to go. You were hiking and someone removed this rock from in front of you. You were going and something was about to hit you, someone protected you, for example. Or any of those small little things. Do you really need a religion to come and tell you that you should be thankful to this person who just showed kindness to you? If it wasn't his duty, but he went ahead and did that for you. He said, no, religion does not have to come and tell me this. This is something which is inherent, which is instinctively in every human being to show gratitude towards someone who has done favor to them. Here we find that our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin has clearly outlined the steps to respond to someone who has shown kindness to you. Number one, Imam says, you should thank him. Number two, you should acknowledge the kindness and spread the good word about him. Yes. Not to, make him, feel proud or brag or boast. No, because it's coming from your tongue about him sincerely due to the good deed that he has done for you. You should sincerely pray for him. This is where it shows sincerity, because when you raise your hands in the bargah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking for someone else, Allah, give them this, Allah, protect them, Allah, for example, forgive them, that's genuine. And then you should practically compensate him if you can. Else you should be determined to do it later. So the emphasis that Imam is laying, aside from the first three things, you should be determined to make sure that you're able to not so much return the favor, but be able to do the same exact thing. And we'll get to the root of why Imam is emphasizing on that. Goodness and evil, they're not equal, first of all, of course. Quran highlights this aspect in chapter 41, verse number 34, when it says, وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ ادْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. Good and evil conducts are not equal. Repel evil with what is best. So first of all, they're contradictory to one another, good and evil. But if evil is, you're presented with evil, he says, repel it with what? With good. If you do so, he between whom and you was enmity will then be as though he were sympathetic, he were a sympathetic friend. Hamimun waliyun hamim, sympathetic friend. So this is how you're able to win the hearts. This is how you're able to change the hearts. This is how you're able to impact someone, without even uttering a word. Masumin and the Aqwal of Masumin says, Kunu du'at al-nase bighayri alsinatikum. Guide people to our path without having used your tongue. You don't have to speak about our merits to them so that they come and become attractive, which is a good way of doing so, because you'd rather use their words than using your own words. I'd rather sit here and quote hadith for you than, bring something from my own. There's barakat in the words of Masumin, and plus there's wisdom behind it. But Imam is saying, Kunu du'atan lin-nasi bighayri alsinatikum. You say, well, Maulana, you're doing the opposite. You're inviting people by using the words of Imam Masum. But Imam is saying, show your character through your behavior. You should be able to guide people. You should be able to bring them onto the path. Remember that famous story of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he was traveling to Kufa, I believe. And on his way to Kufa, he met this man who apparently was Jewish. And the Imam started talking to him. He was a companion of his travel. And because it was a long journey and they were both traveling together, they started talking. And by the time they reached a place, because they spoke about where they were both headed. Imam told him that he was headed toward Kufa. He said, I was going towards Basra. So they came along to a specific place together. And then it was time for them to separate their ways. Imam had to go in one direction. He had to go in the other direction. But after having traveled for so many days or, so many hours together, When they came to that point where they were going to go ahead and bid farewell to one another, and they did bid farewell to one another, Imam started walking in his direction. He turned around and he said, I thought you were headed toward Kufa and you're coming in this direction. What happened? Is there something that I can do for you? Imam said, no. Up until this point, Imam had not mentioned a word about his religion. Imam only showed his character to this man. But at this moment, Imam said, my religion tells me that when you become friends with someone, you should accompany them when you're bidding farewell to them to a few steps so that they don't feel total strangers in this new valley that they're entering without you. And because you are entering into this, new valley by yourself and you had gotten accustomed to my company, I wanted to accompany you. And I mention this every year after Ramadan, that the holy month of Ramadan was a friend of ours. Who gets to bid farewell to the month of Ramadan? The one who fasted, the one who was able to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the fasts that we performed. Now, how this was a friend of yours which had come to your houses for 30 days, and now this friend of yours is leaving. Imagine someone is visiting you from overseas. Your relatives come from Pakistan or India or East Africa or Iran or wherever your hometown is. Your mother, your father, if they live over there, they come in to visit you. They're here for a visit. They stay here for a month. And now after a month, they're going to go back. Do you just say, well, that's it. We had a good time. And now, Khuda Hafiz, take a cab yourself and go to the airport. You show some courtesy and you say, well, no, it's my mom, it's my dad. I'm going to go ahead and take him to the airport. And I'm going to actually stay there until they are, finally they've flown out. This is how usually is done in our culture. I don't know, maybe different in other cultures. Why are you doing all of this? Because they're close to you. This month of Ramadan was close to you as well. How do you bid farewell to this month? Just by celebrating on the day of Eid? No. By fasting in the month of Shawwal. You're fasting throughout the month. Now the month has ended. The best way to bid farewell is walk along with this month while you walk into the next month. For Riwayat mentioned at least 6 days in the month of Shawwal, one should fast to sort of show, farewell to this month that has passed us. So it is natural that we should do good in response to those who have done some good to us. In this verse that I recited, La tastawil hasana was sayya wala sayya, we read that, we should treat those who have done some evil to us, although they have done evil, even those should be treated with kindness. Let alone those who are treating us with kindness. Their ihsan should always be compensated with ihsan. But the one who's treating you with evil, even they should be treated with kindness. This will have great effect on them. It will attract them towards you. So many stories of Masumeen are coming to my mind at this moment. You've heard many of these stories. The incident of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wasalam with that Shami, the person from Sham, who spoke ill of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. But Imam treated him nicely, invited him to his house, offered him food, a ride, saying that you might be a stranger in this town. That's why you're speaking this way. Someone who's local in this town doesn't speak like this. But Imam did not become, conceited and haughty and said, well, you're speaking ill of me. You don't know who I am. I'm the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. I'm the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. I'm the grandson of the Holy Prophet. You're treating, Imam did not go and do anything. Although Amir al-Mu'mineen was not, according to these Ahl Sunnah or Muslimin at large, was not Khalifat al-Muslimin at that point, but still, he had his maqam, always had this maqam. He was Imam of the Ummah. But Imam Hassan did not claim any of those things. Rather, he spoke, Itfa billati hiya ahsan, spoke nicely to him. That man right away had an, profound impact of how Imam was speaking. This man, I'm speaking to him in this way, and he's returning it with ahsan to me. Or the story of our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad Baqir, when a man spoke to him and called him Baqir, made fun of his name, mocked his name, and said bad things about his mother. But Imam responded nicely, which directly had an effect on this individual. So there's so many stories in this reference. I'll skip through so that I can get to the kalam of Ma'sumin. So response to the courteous greeting. That is actually a, hukum in Quran. If you read in Surah Nisa, ayat number 86, it says, وَإِذَا حُيِّيتُمْ بِتَحِيَّةٍ فَحَيُّوا بِأَحْسَنَ مِنْهَا أَوْ رُدُّوهَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَسِيبًا. When you are greeted with a salute, greet with a better one than that. So it comes someone that says salutes you, someone says salamun alaikum. First of all, you should initiate the salam. There isn't any, respect loss when you initiate the salam. Sometimes people think that if I say salam to someone, I'm going to be belittled. No, you should say salamu alaikum, regardless of the fact if someone is young or old is coming. Yeah, we always teach our kids that you should say salam to the elders. That's the way we teach them. But the elders, the ones who are teachers, they should also set the precedent by, extending the salam first. There's nothing wrong. It does not belittle you or degrade your, status. In fact, if anything, it increases it. So, ayah says, فَإِذَا حُيِّيتُمْ بِالتَّحِيَّةٍ فَحَيُّوا بِأَحْسَنَ. If someone says, salamun alaikum, you say, alaikum assalam. And then on top of that, alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Add that on top of it. So Allah says, when someone salutes you, greets you with a salute, greet them with a better one than that. Or return it in the same way at least. Alaikum salam, for example. Indeed, Allah takes account of all things. Yes. Even Allah is going to take account of how you respond to the salam of someone. Now you say, well, this religion is difficult. Man sabaqat rahmatuhu ghadabah, the one whose rahmat exceeds his ghadab. That he's going to keep account of how you greeted someone. Whether it was done, nicely with kindness, you added rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu on top of that, you will be compensated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So greeting one another, greeting each other in any form is the most basic way of expressing kindness to each other. However, we can also find in the traditions that practical forms of expressing kindness are also part of this, concept of greeting. Some people, there are different ways of greeting, right? Some people hug. Well, of course, in this pandemic, we're avoiding the social distance that's happening. So you might not even shake hands with people. But, in some cultures, you shake hands only. You give a hug, for example. So there's musafaha, there's mu'anaqa, or you kiss on the cheeks, for example, or you kiss on the forehead, for example, or you bow in front of, for example, someone. There are different ways of expressing, and that's what Quran is saying over here. We find in a tradition from our sixth Imam Ja'far Sadiq, when he was asked, what is meant by greeting is verbal expression of greetings and any other practical forms of expressing kindness. So it doesn't have to be limited with only verbally saying something. A slave maid brought a flower to give it to our second Imam, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. At that time, there were slaves around. So Ma'sumin, they gradually eradicated this concept, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the ayat, nuzul of ayat for freeing the slave every time you do something, for example, as a kafara, was also there to go ahead and eradicate this illness from the society, which it got rid of it, very quickly. But it's still, they had these and they treated them. In fact, Ma'sumin would go ahead and purchase them out of the hands of those cruel people, train them and then set them free. So a slave maid, brought a flower, although a lot of times these slaves would not even want to leave the company of Ma'sumin and say, well, don't free us. We'd rather be your slaves than be free men walking around, because there's more, sawab, or, we like this, it better to be your slaves than to be free men outside. So he said, she brought a flower to give it to Imam Hassan. She maybe plucked a flower out from the garden. She brought it and presented it to Imam Hassan. Imam returned her favor by freeing her from the bonds of slavery. It was a big thing, to understand the expense of it, that when a person breaks a fast, on purpose, intentionally rather, first kafara is to free a slave. You say, well, there's no slaves. So you go to the second kafara, which is to fast for 60 days. Not many of us can do that. So what's the third one? Third one is to feed 60 people. Let's say if it takes about, $10 to feed one person, You multiply that by $600 to feed 60 people, just medium average here in the United States. So when a person is freed, it's definitely more than that. This lady had just brought a flower to Imam. Imam returned the favor. Again, according to the ayat of Quran, it says, when a person فَإِذَا حُيِّيتُم بِتَحِيَّةٍ, it says فَحَيُّوا بِأَحْسَنِ مِنْهَا. Imam returned the favor, and he recited this ayah that I'm returning the favor in a better way because that's what Allah has commanded. He then said, freeing her was more courteous greeting. Then we can see that this offering was more courteous greeting is a general decree that includes both verbal and physical forms of greeting. And that's why ayat of Quran this is one of the most beautiful ayat of Quran. It says in chapter 55, which is Surah Rahman, and ayat number 60, Hal jaza'ul ihsani illa al-ihsan. That is the requital of goodness, anything but goodness. Could there be anything possible that you could do for kindness other than kindness? And that's why it is mentioned that Muhsin Islam, Hazrat Abu Talib والسلام, did that favor to the Holy Prophet, that he protected him, he nurtured him, he was the one responsible for his custody, upbringing was done in his household, in his hands. He's the one who took Prophet to all of these different trade caravans that he attended, and he went to Syria and other places. This was all part of the training of, the worldly dealings of the Holy Prophet. Done by who? Hazrat Abu Talib. So it's an ihsan that he did to the Holy Prophet. So what's the response? Hal jaza'ul ihsan illa al-ihsan. Is there kindness? Anything could be done aside from kindness? So therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does the favor. That, oh, Abu Talib, you took care of our servant in your house, in raising him in your house, we will bring your son in our house. Hal jaza'ul ihsan illa al-ihsan. Could there be any compensation or requital of goodness by anything other than goodness? So in many commentaries of the Quran, the good mentioned here in this verse has been interpreted by unity of God, his recognition and submission in his way. Our sixth Imam Jafar Sadiq said, if it is the Almighty's words that is there any reward for good other than good? This holds true for believers, pagans, good doers, and evil doers. Why? You must reward good for good. Whoever has done good should be responded with good. The proper compensation is not to respond with as much good that was done to you. So someone gave you 100, you give 100 back, for example. I'm just giving in the monetary form the example of it. They said, no, you should respond with something better than that. Why? Because if you respond in the same exact way, then the one who initiated the good deed has superior hand over you. Because both of them have done the same amount. But the one who initiated it has superiority over you because he was the one who initiated it. In Mufradat al-Raghibi says, doing good is loftier than doing justice. Because in case of doing justice, you give and take as much as you are supposed to. Whatever the limit is set. But in doing good, you always give more than you're due to give and take less, than what you actually deserve. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in this reference, there are many ayat. As I'm running out of my time, so I'll skip through and get to the last portion of the discussion, and I'll only take a couple of minutes of your time. That being friendly with others. In this day and age when a lot of people look at the religion and they're frowned by the religion, that, people of religion are evil and religion teaches nothing but, evil. Karl Marx called it to be poison, that don't get closer to religion. All of the adyan, were labeled as poison. And there was a negative propaganda. And there was, some wrongdoing by the religious people, in the Renaissance era. And then, now, although those people have nothing to do with religion, but because they are the flag bearers, they hold the flag high and they say, well, Allahu Akbar, and then they call themselves to be the true believers and the followers and the jihadists. then people look at them for what they're doing, and they consider them to be the representative of this beautiful religion of ours, which is, of course, very, which is not a true representation, which is sad, unfortunately, but that's the norm. So being friendly with others is a concept that Islam promoted. It says the verse cited clarified how important it is to be kind with others, especially those who have done favors to us. There's some tradition, there's actually a chapter on this subject in this book called Usul al-Kafi. And I'll just quote a few over here. Abu Basir quoted from our fifth Imam that an Arab from Bani Tamim tribe went to see the Holy Prophet and said, please advise me. The advice that the Prophet gave him was, Tahabba ila nasi yuhibbuka. Be affectionate to the people so that they will love you. Of course, don't be cunning that you're just showing to get people's attraction. No. Be affectionate to them so that they love you. You want to gauge and measure aql and intellect? It's a 1/3 of intellect is to be friendly with people. What are these people representing? They're representing hate and unfriendly nature. Rasulullah said, "At-tawaddudu ila an-nasi nisful aql." Half of the intellect is to show love to people. Yet they call other religions to be the representatives of love. Thus we realize that we must treat others with kindness, especially those who have done us a favor, especially those, because they're closer relationship. Prophet said, "Man awla ma'rufan falyukafa bihi, fa in lam yastati falyadhkurhu, fa in dakarahu faqad shakarahu." Whoever receives a favor should compensate. If he cannot do so, then at least he should mention it. Thus, if he mentions it, he has thanked the one who has done him a favor. So if you can't compensate, at least mention it. Isna' al-ma'ruf ila man huwa ahluh. Treat with kindness those who are worthy of it and those who are not worthy of it. Here's the point. You treat with kindness those who are worthy of it and those who are not worthy of it. For it, you treat someone who with kindness, the one who is worthy of it, then you've done justice. But if you treat someone who is not worthy of it, then you yourself is higher in the standards and you are worthy of doing such a thing. So you don't always have to look at the opposite side. If they are worthy of it or not, you are worthy of doing such a good, so you should go ahead and do so. At last, let us consider our fourth Imam, what he means when he says, treat who treats you kindly. We totally understand the meaning at this point, how Imam ﷺ is trying to establish this brotherhood, this concept of harmony and love and compassion amongst your fellow human being. So many riwayat are coming to my mind at this moment. I'll refrain from going into them, but they are the true, true representation of akhlaq in Islam. Ala ukhbirukum bi khayri khalaiq ad-dunya wal akhirah. Prophet said, should I inform you of the best of the akhlaq of this world and the hereafter? He says, al-afwu amman dalamaka. Forgive the one who has, done being unjust to you. Al-ihsanu ila man asaa ilayka. Be kind to the one who has been unkind to you. Wa'ti man, and give to the one who has deprived you. And connect ties with those who have disconnected ties with you. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us the tawfiq, that we're able to bid farewell properly to this month of Ramadan. And we're able to treat people kindly, with kindness, those who've been kind to us, and even those who have not been so kind to us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of our awaited Imam and make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.